What is going on, Peep Squad? Today's video is about WandaVision episode 5. I don't know what it's called, but it's episode 5. I don't know if they have
I
names or
don't
not.
think they have names. At least it doesn't show on Disney.
It's back and forth. It's the first one that jumps between
Yeah.
the real world, and they call it the Hex in this episode. Yeah,
In the episode, Darcy called it the hex because of all the hexagons, which you mentioned
right.
in an earlier video we did. But
Hmm.
what I find interesting is that in the comics, Scarlet Witch's powers were based off of like hexes, technically, which was like
Right.
some weird magic thing. So I think that's just kind of a Easter egg or a nod to that.
Sure, sure. Yeah, and I was watching a video earlier, just like actually just now, where it kind of mentioned that in up until this point, we saw hexagons in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and that was kind of used to jump across different points in the
Right.
universe. And it was at the end of Far From Home, we saw Nick Fury using that to kind of like a hologram when he was in space.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so the using was drawing a parallel between like hexagons and like multi-dimensional travel. And so that
Interesting.
could be like how they're
Yeah.
using to kind of branch across the multiverse.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an interesting point.
One thing that I thought was interesting was that not only did I don't know, I'm just gonna call her Monica. I don't remember her hex name. Not only did her clothes when they changed
Right.
to the 70s, but they stayed the same on the other side, but also
Mm-hmm.
they she went in wearing a bulletproof vest and she came back wearing the 70s clothes, but it was still bulletproof. So it's interesting that it maintained the properties of its original form, but it changed.
Yeah, I thought, yeah, like you said in the last one we did together, the last sort of review breakdown we did together,
Hmm.
you were saying that when we saw Monica launched out of the hex, I guess, with her like 70s clothes, you were like
Yeah.
thinking like, so the reality changing stays the same, which it seems you were
Hmm.
right. It seems whatever Monica, or not Monica, whatever Wanda changes in the hex ends
Yeah.
up basically just staying the same for all
Hmm.
reality. And we kind of got to see that a little bit last episode when the guy in the hazmat suit went down the tunnels, and then all of a sudden his suit kind of became like a beekeeper suit, and his tether became like a plastic jump rope.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's interesting that it basically just took what was already there, the Kevlar, and just turned it
Hmm.
into something else, which was,
Right.
which yeah, that was kind of cool to see, and very interesting. If that's true, then it seems like Wanda can only like change things that are already there. She can't create stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you brought up last week's episode, and I just wanted to, so because last week they mentioned a missing person, and
Right.
based on the information we have in this episode, I think that the missing person's possibly Vision. What do you think
Oh.
about that?
That's possible, but it was like in this episode they revealed that Wanda went and actually got Vision's body. That
Right,
was a
right.
big thing that I was thinking about this whole, basically since the trailers came out, is like,
Hmm.
did she really bring Vision back with reality warping, or did she basically just sort of make a fake version of him? But it seems like she
Yeah.
actually took the remnants of his body that,
Hmm.
Thanos obviously killed him in Infinity War, and then it seems like Sword was
Right.
keeping his body. Who knows how they got their hands on his corpse, but
Yeah.
it seems like they were holding him, and she basically just seems like she's sort of snapped and just broke into Sword and took his body, and then it
Hmm.
seems like she kind of resurrected him. I'm guessing with her reality warping powers. But what I thought was
Yeah.
interesting last week was the whole thing where, for a second, Vision was standing there and he looked, like he did after Thanos killed him, except for the
Right.
fact that he was obviously alive. For a second, I thought maybe she was having like a flashback to when he died, but now I'm thinking that is what he actually looks like. When he looks like normal Vision is just part of the whole facade.
Right.
But about the missing persons case, I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure they would say missing persons if it was like, for one thing, a dead body, and secondly, a dead android. So
Right.
I
Right.
feel like that might be a nod to something that's going to happen later,
Okay.
perhaps. Yeah, they revealed a lot in this episode.
Yeah.
It was probably
Mon-
the most exciting one so far, for sure.
Yeah, I think it was the longest at like
Yeah.
35 minutes long. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
which isn't even that long, but I guess
No,
for
it's not.
Disney Plus shows, it's pretty long.
Yeah. So right after that, they kind of have a meeting and they kind of go over Wanda's like backstory. And
Yeah.
they mentioned her parents, and I don't
Right.
remember what is Magneto's first name. Do you know?
Um, well, he technically has two first names because I think for a while he was going with the name Magnus or something like that,
Hmm.
but his name is Eric Lencher.
Okay, that wasn't the name they used.
No, yeah, I'm thinking if they ever do make Magneto her dad, it could just be that, somehow the mom and Magneto had kids or something, and she met the dad like soon after that. So then
Hmm.
he raised them, something like that. Because I
Sure.
think they called him like Oleg Maximoff or something.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so this episode it kind of makes director Hayworth look kind of like a bad guy.
Yeah, which yeah, but like yeah, it's interesting because
Hmm.
he's not 100% wrong. Like there's all the stuff he's
Right,
saying. Because
right.
like it is interesting that Wanda, this is happening to Wanda right now, or she's doing this, whichever.
Hmm.
Because she was one of the sparks that started the whole Civil War thing, and
Right.
she's always, ever since then, she's sort of been like a controversial Avenger. Like
Hmm.
so I find it interesting that she's the one that's doing this. It just kind of seems a bit convenient. Somebody on the outside, it's like, oh, well, yeah, I guess it makes sense she would do this because she's already done all this other stuff.
Right. After that, we go back into the hex and we meet
Yeah.
the kids and they
Yeah, that was an interesting part of the episode.
yeah, the part where they grow up was like that's a freaky
Yeah.
effect.
Yeah, it was weird, but at the same time, it was. We kind of talked about this again in an earlier video,
Uh-huh.
where I was thinking like they're probably gonna, since she was pregnant so quickly and had the
Yeah.
baby so quickly. I'm thinking like I was thinking they might grow up really quickly, and this seems to be the
Hmm.
case in the course of like a day or two. They grew like 12 years or something, like 10
Yeah,
years. So I'm like,
yeah.
yeah, I find that interesting. So I wonder if like by the end of the series, if they won't be like teenagers or older.
Sure. Yeah.
What's interesting too is it seemed like Wanda didn't really have control over their growing. At first I assumed
Right.
she did, but throughout the episode they made it seem like the twins themselves had control over it. It almost also kind of makes me wonder too if they are going to give them powers and if they are going to be a part of the MCU going forward, or if they're just
Yeah.
like part of this show. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah, it seems like they might be leading towards a young Avengers with
Yeah.
Kate Bishop and some of the other characters. I'm
Yeah.
not really sure.
At the very beginning, what I thought was interesting, and I could be wrong, but like when we first saw Monica like thrown out of the hex, I was thinking
Hmm.
like that's got to be a broken bed. Like there's no way she's like okay from
Yeah.
that. She just got flung through two walls, so like freaking 20
Hmm.
feet in the air, and then like they end up having doctors check her out, like have
Yeah.
blood tests and other stuff, see if she had broken bones or anything, and she came back fine. Monica
Hmm.
assumed it was because Wanda protected her or something, but part of
Right.
me wonders if Monica doesn't already have her powers and doesn't realize
Yeah.
it yet.
Yeah.
Because like we didn't see, like normally when Wanda does something, even when we saw her throw Monica out of the hex, there's like that red energy that surrounded her. But when she
Hmm.
fell and down, there was no red energy. Like so, it
Right.
didn't seem like Wanda was protecting her. But I don't know,
Hmm.
maybe not. But it could be like kind of a foreshadowing of Monica's powers.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of that, there was a little reference to Captain Marvel in this episode,
I
and
thought that, yeah, that was funny.
yeah, but it was interesting because Monica seemed almost like upset when
Yeah,
Jimmy brought her name up,
yeah, yeah. I found
and
that.
yeah, yeah, I don't really know why I haven't seen that movie yet.
Oh god.
um,
Okay, so
Approximately 10 hours later.
at the end of the movie, Captain Marvel decides to leave to go help the Skrulls like repopulate or whatever the hell. I don't know. It was weird. But anyway,
yeah,
but then as far as we know, she's been gone for like 30 years up until the
yeah,
whole events of Avengers Endgame. So I'm
hmm,
guessing maybe she's mad because she like never came back. She just sort of like
sure,
left
sure,
and wasn't there for her mom dying.
hmm,
Wasn't there for her mom at all. She just was like off in space for 20 something years. So maybe
yeah,
that's it. I don't know for sure. But I,
okay,
I, I did think that whole scene was funny, where it almost sounded like two like Avengers or Marvel fans like kind of debating a little bit, because
mm,
like she was talking about, she mentioned that scene where Wanda basically would have killed Thanos if he didn't do that little, like she called it, a blitz,
yeah,
and then Jimmy was like, well, I mean, Captain Marvel came pretty close too, which I'm not really sure holding a person's hand is really coming close to defeating them, but
hmm,
and then but then she just got like yeeted out of there with a freaking like power stone.
Yeah.
So I think Wanda came a little closer, but I guess Jimmy Woo is a Captain Marvel fan for some reason.
Yeah.
But I did think that scene was pretty funny.
Yeah. And so another interesting thing in this episode is Vision is kind of slowly realizing what's going on, and they receive an email at the job, and he sort of wakes up Norm, which eagle-eyed viewers from last week's episode read on his paper something about that. That like it said on his little paper that Vision wakes him up, and we didn't really know what that meant, but now we do.
On whose paper?
On Norm's paper. It said that.
Okay, interesting.
Because they had the wall with all the papers and ID.
Oh, right.
And on his paper, it said that. And so apparently, maybe the real world stuff is a little bit ahead of the Hex stuff. I don't know.
It could just be a continuity error too. I don't
know. That's This episode, it makes it seem more like Wanda is definitely in control, but I'm not really sure. What do you think about that? Do you think that she's being manipulated, or what are your thoughts on that?
For one thing, it's interesting. They were really suggesting in this episode that she's in control, and it almost took like a dark turn. It's like almost a little dark for like Marvel outside of a couple of their movies where, like when Vision woke up Norm and he was saying stuff about like, he can't find his family and yada yada, like he's all in pain, all that stuff, and Vision's like Wanda's like kind of hurting people. And then, he went to kind of confront her, and she was basically saying, I'm doing this for us. But then there's that other scene where we actually got to see her for the first time, like outside of the Hex, like in her her super suit or whatever, and she seemed very in control, and like she wanted them to leave her alone, and she was doing her thing. So it seems like she's in control. But then later on, like kind of in that same scene where Vision was confronting her, she said that she doesn't remember how it started. So I'm kind of thinking somebody started this, maybe is manipulating her or messing with her mind. So I think she's in control, and she really is trying to do this just to live a life with Vision. But I think she herself is either being manipulated or kind of controlled a little bit. Like I kind of said earlier in our other video, like I think it's kind of a cross between House of M, her altering reality, but also, somebody else, like maybe like Nightmare or whatever his name is, or Mephisto.
Yeah, it was funny because right when Vision started confronting her, she did the credits.
Oh yeah, that scene was very funny. It was like a really serious conversation. It was like that cheesy 80s sitcom music, and that was well done. I like that. I did find it interesting earlier in the episode that, like, her name's Scarlet Witch. I kind of think, did they ever call her that in the movies? Because when the director, I forget his name, when he
Hayworth, I think
Hayworth, when he said like Maximoff, like, does she have any like other like superhero name or something, and Jimmy Woo was like, nope, she doesn't. I'm trying to think, like, for whatever reason, like I'm pretty sure in all the marketing and everything they've called her Scarlet Witch, like not for this show but in other movies. So I'm trying to think, like, has she never actually had the name Scarlet Witch yet? Or was Jimmy...
the movies, I don't think she does, but obviously in the marketing, people refer to her as that.
Right,
I know they ever called her that.
I know in Age of Ultron, Iron Man called her like a witch, but it was like it wasn't, her name. It was more just like an insult. So yeah, maybe they never really have officially used the name. Maybe like she'll get the name by the end of this series or something. More as almost like a bad moniker,
Yeah.
Or maybe Jimmy was just trying to like not make it sound worse because he was already saying she's a terrorist and then saying like, oh, she's actually a witch,
Yeah.
So I don't know. But yeah, let's talk about the ending, which is probably the most interesting part. So you were right. That leak you were talking about was right.
A couple weeks ago there was a leak on Twitter about Evan Peters showing up as Quicksilver, and he showed up at the end of this episode.
And, I was a little confused for a hot second there because like I wasn't sure. I like you said, I was expecting Evan Peters to show up, but I was also thinking like that. Why would that mean? Because when Wanda opened the door, that's another thing that makes me think that she's not fully in control. Like she said to Vision, "I didn't do this," and she seemed like actually surprised,
right?
That Quicksilver, like her brother Pietro, was there. So I found it interesting too. At first I was like, are they gonna like show Aaron Taylor Johnson or Evan Peters? Because she seemed very surprised and she recognized him. So I'm like, but then it was Evan Peters, and then that was funny too. Darcy said like she recast her own brother,
right?
That was funny. So I wonder what they're going to do with that. Like if he's going to be, and I'm assuming he's going to be like supporting character in the next episode at least.
I hope so. Yeah.
So I'm kind of wondering what they're going to do with his character. If it's just sort of like a tongue-in-cheek, like self-aware joke, where because obviously they know he was Quicksilver in the X-Men movies, or if it is going to sort of open the multiverse sort of discussion at least, because like to Wanda, that face shouldn't mean anything.
Right.
So she's like, if she isn't surprised by the way he looks, that's kind of going to be a weird thing. I wonder if they're going to address that in the next episode, where she's like, you look different, yada yada, and like he obviously acted differently. They are like just different versions of the character. Evan Peters was a lot more like quippy and kind of hyper, whereas the Aaron Taylor Johnson version was like, he had like some sarcastic quips, but he was also a little more intense and serious. I wonder how they're going to play off that. I wonder if it's gonna actually have a big effect on the MCU, or if it's just kind of a weird way to recast somebody.
Yeah. I had a thought. How many people do you think that are watching the MCU actually recognized Evan Peters? Because at once he started showing up, I don't think there's a correlation between him and the decline of the X-Men universe, but once he started showing up, the movies got continually worse after that point, more or less.
Yeah.
And so people stopped watching him eventually. So I'm wondering, how many people do you think actually recognized him?
Yeah, I don't know. I think for like very casual fans who maybe seen only part of the MCU, or just mostly just like hopped onto the MCU bandwagon and haven't really watched a lot of other comic book movies, they probably just don't know what the heck's going on. But I think people like who watch a lot of superhero movies, like I think most of my friends have seen the X-Men movies, at least through Days of Future Past, and at least mostly through Apocalypse. So I think most people will be able to recognize them, at least a lot. I mean, there's probably going to be plenty of people that don't. Like, I don't know, my mom hasn't seen it yet, but I don't know if she'll recognize them, but she might, So I think definitely the diehard Marvel fans will. I think there'll be plenty of people that will, but of course there's going to be people that just don't really follow a lot of this stuff, so they might not know. But maybe they'll explain it more, so even casual fans will get it. I don't know. But that was a very interesting way to introduce not only her brother again, but Evan Peters Quicksilver, and that makes me think again, like maybe they're going to sort of slowly introduce the mutants. Maybe kind of by the end of this series, reveal that Wanda was a mutant the whole time. Maybe something like that. I guess we'll see. But I think that would be an interesting way to introduce the X-Men into the MCU.
Oh, along that line, assuming that Evan Peters is he stays in the MCU, which other characters do you think they're going to introduce from that universe?
Well, I feel like you kind of have to at least have Professor X and Magneto.
Right.
I'm thinking they might just kind of stick with the original lineup, or at least some of the characters like Cyclops, Angel, Jean, and Storm, and maybe Beast. Maybe just have the original lineup like they had with Apocalypse, besides Quicksilver and Nightcrawler. I think they might just stick to them, but I don't know for sure. I know. It seems like Kevin Feige isn't eager to recast Wolverine anytime soon.
Right.
So I feel like they might stick to some of the mutants that haven't gotten as much of a chance to shine, but are still really popular. But how about you? Who do you think should or will end up?
Well, yeah, because I'm a really big fan of Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. And I don't know, because his arc is pretty much ended. I don't know how I'd feel if they brought him back. And so I think just leaving that character aside for right now is probably the best move.
Probably.
We know that Ryan Reynolds is coming back.
Yeah. In Deadpool 3.
Yeah.
And it's not clear if that's gonna I'm sure they're gonna find a way to do it, but it's not clear how that's gonna be a part of the wider MCU.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I guess they would have to bring back Professor X, but I'm not sure if they would do the Patrick Stewart or the I'm forgetting the other guy's name.
James McAvoy.
I feel like
Patrick Stewart's getting kind of old. Like, he still looks great, but I think he's almost 80, or he is 80 now. So I feel like he's a little old for that role at this point. Even though he was amazing. Originally, I think that was kind of something that I was wondering about, whether they are going to fold in some of the characters from the X-Men universe, just sort of have them brought in.
Yeah.
using like the multiverse, because they're gonna be doing that obviously, or if they're just gonna
Right.
recast them all and pretend like the
Yeah.
X-Men movie. No, like that kind of throws a wrench in the whole idea of pretending the X-Men movies never existed, though, bringing Evan Peters back as Quicksilver.
Right.
I feel like
Right.
if you're gonna do that, then it's really hard to forget the X-Men movies ever existed if you're basically mentioning, like, bringing them into the light in the MCU. So it's like, I
Yeah.
don't know what they're gonna do.
Yeah.
But I am interested in seeing what they're gonna do.
Yeah, I just hope that Quicksilver is like a permanent fixture, because I really like Evan Peters and his version of the character.
Yeah, it'd be very interesting. It would be very interesting. Like I like them both for different reasons. I feel like
Yeah.
Aaron Taylor Johnson's version didn't really get enough time to
Yeah,
really show
Aaron
what he
Taylor
could do.
Johnson is a really good actor, and he was kind
Yeah.
of cut short with
Yeah.
Age of Ultron.
I think it would be interesting to have them interact at some point, like have the two versions, like, have some
Yeah.
sort of multiverse thing. I think that'd be kind of cool, but we'll see what happens. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like it
Yeah.
sounds like, I doubt that they'll do it in this movie, but I know that the new Spider-Man movie is supposed to be like insane, like have like everything. So
Yeah.
who knows what it's going to open up and what Doctor Strange 2 is going to open up, the whole multiverse. But yeah. So I don't remember the source exactly, but I think in some interview recently, Elizabeth Olsen was talking, and she was saying that there was I think she said at the last episode, she said there was going to be like an Avengers cameo that is going to be similar to,
Mark Hamill.
Mark Hamill being, Luke Skywalker in the end of The Mandalorian season 2.
Right.
So I'm wondering, like, if I don't think it's Evan Peters Quicksilver, because she made it seem like it was an Avengers character, like, an actual.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if by like I wonder who that's gonna be. If like it's gonna be in like the very end, like somebody, like, I don't know who, because like a lot of the Avengers are gone, and I feel like at this point it wouldn't really even be a surprise for any of the Avengers to really come back, unless it was somebody who's like dead, or like, because I feel like Doctor Strange would be a bit obvious, because it's supposed to tie into Doctor Strange, and I don't know, but it'll still be interesting. And I feel like everybody else is like off world, like beside, like I think Captain Marvel's gone. I think Thor is off in space with the Guardians of the Galaxy. So yeah, I don't know who's gonna show up, but
yeah, I don't know. It could have been Evan Peters, but yeah, I don't know.
that's pretty much the whole episode.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy. Like if this season keeps moving at this momentum, it's gonna end on a pretty crazy note, I think.
Yeah,
I think it started out really slow at the beginning, but it's really picking up speed the last couple of episodes. But thank you everybody for watching, and if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. If you're not, thank you for subscribing, and check out our new podcast, the Casual Comic Podcast. That's our new podcast, and check out the Instagrams where most of our content is, and all the other stuff. Patreon links below. Yeah, all that.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks again, everyone, for watching, and see y'all later.